You think your charm is an invincible weapon, but what you don't realize is that every heart you steal will leave an unhealable scar. And in the end, you yourself will pay the price for these cunning games of yours.
He was always the man every woman desired, with his perfect looks and irresistible charm. But could that allure last forever? A mysterious curse would force him to face a painful truth. Every heart he deceived, every love he shattered, would leave behind an unhealable wound. This story serves as a warning to all men who believe that charm can cover up every mistake. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to follow the continuation of our story. Long ago, in a small village by the Potomac River in Maryland, there lived a fisherman named Marcus. He stood out not only for his handsome appearance and strong build, which made him the object of every woman's desire in the village, but also for his ability to melt anyone's heart in an instant. However, behind that charming gaze and sweet words lay a soul full of deceit. Marcus was always a manipulator, using his allure to win the hearts of women, only to abandon them once he achieved his goal. No one could resist his charm, but no one could escape the pain when he left them. Then, there was a special girl, one whose heart Marcus couldn't easily manipulate. Laia, a mystical mermaid chosen by the river goddess Nia to perform sacred rituals, was someone the entire village respected and adored. She was a symbol of purity, a bridge between the divine and human worlds in this riverside community. No one dared to cross her boundaries, for doing so would mean facing unimaginable punishment. Yet, Marcus couldn't resist the challenge when he heard the teasing remarks of the village men, sparking his curiosity and desire to conquer. This provocative bet fueled his determination to test himself, to lure Laia into his game of deceit and possession. That evening, under the cold, silvery moonlight, Marcus approached Laia by the riverbank, where the waves gently lapped in silence. He looked at her with a mesmerizing gaze, his mysterious smile revealing secrets only he understood. His sweet words and false promises dripped like honey into Laia's heart, making it impossible for her not to feel moved. Laia knew he was deceiving her, but the power of his vows and the tenderness in his eyes made her waver. She had always been steadfast and cautious with men's advances, but she couldn't deny that when she looked into his eyes, emotions she had never felt before ignited within her. Every time they met, Laia forgot her guard, forgot everything she had once believed in. They met under the mystical moonlight, a rendezvous that was nothing more than a meaningless game Marcus created to satisfy his ego and gain the admiration of his peers in the village. Laia's emotions were a wave of contradictions, constantly rising. She knew she was stepping into the trap Marcus had set, but she couldn't stop herself. She couldn't tear her gaze away from his eyes, couldn't resist his sweet kisses or his unusually tender words. After all, even the mermaid was human, with desires and emotions that were hard to comprehend. Every night, Laia drifted into dreams that felt all too real, where she imagined their love could be true, where Marcus wouldn't be like other men, just another deceiver. But the truth came swiftly, like a sharp slap to her ching-shing face. One evening, as Laia sat by the river, Marcus didn't show up as usual. She waited and waited, but he never came. A strange feeling washed over her, like a warning sign. Was this the end of his game? Was she just the next to be left behind after he got what he wanted? Before she could think further, one of the village men, someone she had never paid attention to, appeared beside her. He spoke with a bitter tone. "Marcus has achieved his goal, Laia. He's won. He only saw you as part of his bet. Those words struck her heart like a thunderbolt. Laia stared at the man, feeling as though everything had shattered. She realized then that the love, the sweet promises, and all the tender emotions Marcus had shown her were nothing but a cruel joke. He wasn't the man she had imagined. He was just a player toying with her heart. And now, his game was over. A cold wind suddenly swept through, rustling the branches around the riverbank. Then, an eerie silence fell over the entire space. Everything seemed to freeze. Even the sound of the flowing water felt as if it had been stifled. And then, a sudden noise erupted from the river, making Laia flinch and turn around. The water stirred violently, waves rising as if rebelling against something immense. A chilling sensation spread across the air, as though an invisible force was watching them, waiting, anticipating a reaction. Laia felt the danger creeping closer, like an arrow aimed straight at her heart. The river no longer felt peaceful. It was thick with tension, suffocating and oppressive. The waves swelled with a relentless fury, as if they sought to swallow everything in their path, dragging it into the abyss. And then, from the depths of the river, a voice rose, a voice terrifying, commanding, and filled with wrath. The sound rumbled like thunder, splitting through the heavy silence. "You have betrayed me, mortal!" The voice was not only seething with anger, but also carried a bone-chilling warning. "You have used the heart of my mermaid priestess to satisfy your selfish desires." Marcus's eyes widened. He looked up, searching, but saw nothing, only darkness and the restless waves. A shiver crawled down his spine, spreading through every inch of his body. But still, Marcus held on to his unnerving calmness. It must be a joke, he thought. Yet deep inside, an unease, unlike anything he had ever felt before, was clawing its way into his mind. How could this be happening? Laia stood nearby, but her knees gave out beneath her. She collapsed onto the ground, eyes wide with terror. Her heart pounded so hard it felt like it might burst. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. A storm of anger, rising from the river, the wrath of goddess Nia. She had heard the stories before, but never had she thought she would witness them come to life. It felt like she had stepped into a nightmare, a world where logic held no power, where nothing could be explained. Then, the voice rose again, louder, fiercer. This time it struck like a blade, stabbing straight into Marcus's chest. "For every lie you have told, you will pay the price." The voice boomed, vibrating through the air like an unshakable judgment. "You will no longer be the man you once were. You will live with the pain and the shame of your betrayal." Marcus stood frozen, the words slicing through him like daggers. He had hurt many women, but never had he thought that one day he would be the one to suffer the consequences. His eyes locked onto Laia, a silent plea in his gaze. "Forgive me." But she could only stare, paralyzed by fear, helpless against the storm that had been unleashed. And then, without warning, like a storm crashing onto the shore, a raging whirlpool erupted from the river. The waves surged with a force beyond imagination, coiling around Marcus like a beast claiming its prey. His body was swallowed by the relentless waters, pain ripping through him like his very soul was being torn apart, piece by piece. It felt as if the entire world had exploded around him. He was falling into a void of darkness, agony, and despair. Laia, trembling, could do nothing but watch in horror. She felt the battle raging within her, the urge to save him, to reach out. But she knew this was beyond her. She had no power here. And then, in the chaos of the raging water, a figure emerged, a glowing, spectral presence within the waves. A towering silver crest of water rose before them, and from within it, goddess Nia revealed herself. Her eyes burned like twin stars, cold, unyielding, divine. Her presence held no warmth, no mercy. She was power itself, a force that no mortal could defy. She turned her piercing gaze onto Marcus, seeing through him, through every lie, every deceit, every game. She did not speak. She simply watched. A long, suffocating silence stretched between them. And then, without a single word, Nia disappeared into the river once more, fading into the eternal waves, as if Marcus was no longer even worth her time. In that moment, Marcus felt his entire world collapse. Pain, shame, despair. He had always believed he could have anything he wanted, but never in his wildest nightmares did he think he would lose everything. The storm raged on, dragging him into the unknown, and as the whirlpool swallowed him whole, the truth finally sank in. Marcus was no longer the man he once was. He was nothing, a cursed soul, condemned by the very force he had dared to play with. And now he was being cast into a future he could not escape. The next morning, when Marcus awoke, his body was no longer his own. A strange sensation crept through him, as if every cell in his body was shifting, vanishing, and being reborn. He sat up, trying to steady himself, but the moment his eyes met the small mirror on the table, a wave of horror crashed over him. His body, once strong, powerful, alluring, was now frail, weak, drained of life. His arms, which had once been firm and muscular, now felt soft and feeble, as if every ounce of strength had been stripped away. It felt like a wave crashing down upon him, sweeping away everything he had once been. A storm of confusion, fear, and disbelief raged within Marcus. He stumbled out of his hut, running toward the river, clinging to the desperate hope that this was nothing more than a nightmare. But when his eyes fell upon the water, nothing had changed. The river still churned, its waves still restless, yet now it no longer carried the peace it once did. And then he saw them. Scars. Faint at first, then growing clearer, spreading across his skin like invisible wounds made visible. Each one a mark, a reminder, a curse, etched into him by an unforgiving force. A punishment for every broken heart, for every whispered lie, for every love he had stolen and abandoned. Shame and guilt coiled around him like a suffocating fog, heavy, inescapable. Marcus asked himself if he truly deserved all of this, if this suffering was the price for his past mistakes. He was no longer the strong, confident, irresistible man everyone once admired. He could feel the change, not only in his appearance, but in his very soul. His once proud and self-assured nature had faded, leaving behind a fragile, uncertain shell. No longer the powerful Marcus, he felt like a shadow, a prisoner trapped in a body that no longer belonged to him. Every step he took felt heavier, every movement unfamiliar and unnatural. He searched desperately for a way to restore himself, but no matter how hard he tried, he could not escape the grasp of the curse. The goddess Nia's punishment had not only transformed his body, but had burrowed deep into his mind, tearing apart every memory of his past sins. He remembered every woman he had deceived, every heart he had shattered. And with each recollection, it felt like a sharp blade slicing through his chest. He could not stop blaming himself. Every time he looked into the mirror, he saw a stranger staring back at him. He was no longer Marcus, the man everyone once admired, but someone else, someone unrecognizable. The guilt weighed on him like a ghost that refused to leave. The shame and pain consumed him to the point that he could bear it no longer. He began to truly comprehend the extent of his actions. The sweet promises, the deceitful charm, every lie, every betrayal, had now returned as relentless nightmares, haunting his every waking moment. The women he had hurt were no longer distant memories, but phantoms lurking in the shadows, whispering their pain into his ears every night. And then there was Laya, the girl he had once seen as nothing more than a challenge, a game to be won. He remembered the way she had looked at him, with trust, with hope. How could he have hurt her so deeply? He asked himself again and again, How could he have traded her heart for his own selfish desires? He could feel the weight of Nia's judgment pressing down on him, not just in his body, but in every breath he took, in every step he walked. This curse was more than just a punishment. It was a sentence that bound his soul to loneliness and pain, a suffering beyond words. Marcus knew he could no longer live as he once had. He felt undeserving of forgiveness, unworthy of love, or even the respect of others. He despised himself, hated the arrogance and selfishness that had led him here. Now, as he stood before the river, facing the wrath of the goddess, regret flooded through him, but perhaps it was too late. Yet in the depths of his despair, a thought emerged, a faint flicker of hope, small, fragile, but the only thing left to hold on to. He realized that if he could not change his past, then he must change his future. He had to atone, to seek redemption for the harm he had caused. No matter how broken he was, he still had a chance to make things right. Determination ignited within him, and Marcus refused to let himself be destroyed by punishment alone. He could not undo what had been done, but he could forge a new path. With each step, though his body felt weak, though his legs felt heavy, Marcus forced himself toward the river. Here, at this place where his sins had caught up to him, he hoped, perhaps in vain, that he could find forgiveness. He knew the goddess Nia did not offer mercy easily, but at the very least, he could find peace if he had the courage to face himself. He no longer wished to run. The time had come for him to pay the price, and perhaps, just perhaps, it was also time for him to begin again. On those bleak days when Marcus felt that all hope had faded, an unexpected change appeared in his life. After all the pain he had caused, he continued to live through long nights filled with guilt and haunting regrets, unsure of what to do to seek redemption, or whether he would ever have the chance to make amends for his mistakes. But as the cold winds of autumn swept through the village, a stranger arrived. Someone Marcus could never have imagined would become an irreplaceable part of his journey to salvation. Amara, a woman who had recently moved from a faraway land, was unlike anyone Marcus had ever met. With a gentle yet unshakable presence, she carried an unusual calmness, entirely unaffected by the charm and tricks Marcus had relied on for so long. Unlike the other women who would falter under his gaze or be swayed by his sweet words, Amara looked at him, not with admiration, but with deep understanding, as if she could see straight into the depths of his soul, where despair and unspoken pain lay hidden. When Marcus first met Amara, he could not understand why she was so different. Usually, the presence of women in the village was an opportunity for him to assert his allure, but Amara did not look at him the way others did. Her eyes did not reflect the familiar attraction he was used to. Instead, they held a penetrating gaze, as if she could see the wounds buried within him. Marcus felt unsettled, a creeping sense of inadequacy rising in his chest as he realized that the tools he had always used to win over others were useless against her. Day by day, they began to talk. Amara did not approach him with flattery or admiration. She did not care about what he had done to gain attention. Instead, she cared only about the person he truly was, the person Marcus had long buried beneath the mask of a seducer. Under Amara's perceptive gaze, Marcus slowly began to feel something stir within him, something he had not known how to confront before. She did not look at him with pity, but with patience, as if she understood that true change took time, effort, and persistence. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and shadows crept into every corner of the village, Amara and Marcus sat by the river, where the gentle waves caressed the shore. For a long while, neither of them spoke. Only the sound of the flowing water and the whispering wind filled the space between them. Marcus felt a strange sense of peace, as if time itself had slowed, as if in this moment he could grasp the serenity he had long lost. At last, Amara broke the silence, her voice soft but firm. "Marcus, you don't have to face this alone. I believe you can change. You can find yourself again. Her words were like a flickering light in the darkness, illuminating the deepest corners of Marcus's heart, the place where he had locked away his pain and regrets for so long. It was not the forgiveness he had once longed for, but an invitation, a call for him to step out of his own shadows, to confront his past, and to start anew. Marcus could not speak at that moment. Amara's words touched something raw inside him, something that made him want to cry, yet he did not dare to. He had spent his life hiding his emotions, suppressing his vulnerabilities. But sitting beside Amara, he felt nothing but sincerity, no judgment, only understanding. She did not look at him as a man deserving of punishment, but as someone who had made mistakes and needed time to find his way back. In the days that followed, Marcus and Amara spent more time together, speaking of the past, of the wrong choices he had made, of the people he had hurt. Each conversation weighed heavily on Marcus, but under Amara's quiet guidance, he began to realize that forgiving himself would not come easily. But if he could not do that, he would forever remain trapped in the prison of his own guilt. Amara was not just a companion, she was a guide, helping Marcus see himself more clearly. She did not rush him, did not demand immediate change, but instead helped him take small, steady steps forward. She believed in his ability to change, not because she saw him as someone flawless, but because she saw within him a great potential, a strength yet to be realized. Marcus's journey had begun, and though it was not easy, he knew he was no longer alone. For the first time, someone remained by his side, refusing to abandon him no matter how lost he had been. It was something he had never experienced before. Amara had given him a chance, not just for redemption, but for self-discovery. The first feeling was pain, as he confronted the weight of his past, but slowly, Marcus realized that with each step, with each passing day, he was drawing closer to the release, to the salvation he had longed for. Marcus and Amara left the village, embarking on a long and arduous journey filled with trials and tribulations. Throughout this journey, the pain of the past clung to Marcus like a shadow that refused to leave. He had hurt too many people, deceived too many pure hearts, and now he had to face the consequences of his mistakes. This was not just a physical journey, but a spiritual one, a battle to find forgiveness, not from others, but from himself. Amara, with her patience and boundless compassion, remained by his side, never leaving him even in his darkest moments. She was more than a friend. She was a guide, helping Marcus find his way when he thought he had lost everything. Though every step felt heavy, with each passing day, Marcus learned more about forgiveness, honesty, and the courage to confront the wrongs he had committed. Each village they passed through told a different story, revealing lives filled with suffering Marcus had never imagined. Women who had been abandoned and deceived, children who had never known their fathers, single mothers struggling to raise their children in poverty. These sights twisted something deep in Marcus's heart, as if he were staring into a mirror reflecting the consequences of his past. Each time he heard the story of a woman left behind, each time he saw the sorrow of fatherless children, his own pain grew deeper, his regret more profound. In the early days of the journey, Marcus felt like a sinner unworthy of redemption. Every word, every glance from those he met on the road felt like a reminder of the damage he had done. Shame and guilt clung to him, making every step heavier. But he knew he could not turn back, could not run away. This journey was the only path forward, the only way he could confront the truth of what he had done, the only way to start anew, to prove to himself that he could change. Amara, with unwavering persistence and a heart full of kindness, never let him walk alone. She remained by his side, offering gentle yet profound words of wisdom, helping him realize that redemption was not about being forgiven by those he had wronged. It was about truly changing from within. Marcus, forgiveness is not a gift you receive from others, she often said, her eyes filled with understanding. It is a gift you give yourself. They arrived at a village that seemed peaceful at first glance, but beneath its quiet surface lay a world of sorrow. There, they met a single mother raising two small children in poverty. She had once been a girl filled with dreams, but now all that remained were memories of a love lost, and her children, the only solace in her life. She had nothing left but her strength and unconditional love for them. The fatherless children, never knowing the love of a father, lived in a world where only their mother's sacrifices sustained them, sacrifices that would never be repaid. Marcus could not ignore the guilt that surged within him as he looked into the woman's eyes. He thought of the women he had left behind, the ones who had once trusted him, the ones who had once loved him. He thought of Laia, of the look in her eyes when he had walked away. How could he ever face her after all he had done? How could he ever make amends for the pain he had inflicted? That night, as they sat by a fire in the village, Marcus could no longer contain his emotions. He stood up, staring into the flames, his eyes filled with pain and self-loathing. Amara, do you see it? The women I left behind, the children without fathers. I hurt them. I deceived them. I used their hearts just to feed my own pride. I do not deserve forgiveness. Amara remained silent for a moment, then stood up and stepped toward him. Gently, she placed a hand on his shoulder. Marcus, you cannot change the past, but you can change the future. Start today. Change from within. That is the only way to atone for your sins. Marcus stood still, feeling the warmth of her touch. He said nothing, but inside him, her words pierced through the darkness like a blade of light. He understood. He could not erase the past, but he could still do something now. He could face the weight of his mistakes. He could learn to apologize. He could begin again. This was the moment he had to move forward, not as the man he once was, but as someone who could finally seek forgiveness from himself. Their journey continued, and with each step, each story they heard, Marcus realized that redemption was not a destination, but a process. It was about transformation from within, about confronting his sins, about learning to live with the consequences of his actions, but also about finding peace in his own heart. Day by day, Marcus felt the change within him. He was no longer the man he once was, no longer the deceiver, the heartbreaker. He began to feel a sense of peace, though the pain and the scars of his past could never truly fade. But at least now, he could walk forward without shame and guilt weighing him down. His journey for redemption was far from over. But with each day that passed, he knew he was getting closer to the forgiveness he so desperately sought. After a long and arduous journey, Marcus and Amara finally arrived at a village called Ober's Hope. It was a quiet, hidden place, nestled between misty hills, where the cold wind carried the scent of damp earth. Yet within the village, an unsettling heaviness lingered. An unbroken curse weighed upon it. This village was unlike any they had seen before. The people here were mostly elderly women and children. The men had long gone to sea, never to return. Anyone in this village could tell you a sorrowful tale, a story of broken promises, of love left unfinished, of wounds so deep that even time could not heal them. The sight of Ober's Hope was something Marcus would never forget. He watched the women toil under the burden of their solitude, single mothers raising their children alone, waiting for husbands who had vanished into the tides. A profound sadness filled their eyes, a sorrow so heavy it could not be put into words. Marcus began to understand that pain did not belong to him alone. These women too were trapped in the past, burdened by unfulfilled promises and love that had faded into oblivion. Their wounds, like his, were scars that time could not erase. In the shadowed stillness of the village, Marcus and Amara sought out a wise old woman, one who had lived there all her life. With silver hair and piercing eyes, she was not one to easily open her heart to strangers. Yet the moment she looked at Marcus, She saw the anguish buried deep in his soul. She asked him nothing, simply leading them into her small, quiet home, a place filled with ancient stories and lessons of the past. She spoke little, yet every word she uttered struck Marcus like an arrow piercing his heart. "You have come seeking redemption, haven't you?" The old woman's voice was deep, steady, and filled with the weight of unshakable truth. Marcus nodded, unable to find his voice. Her words cut through him as though she had peered straight into his soul. She studied him for a long moment before continuing. "But redemption is not found in words alone. It must be proven through action. You have deceived too many, and now you must pay the price for what you have done." Her words pressed down on his chest, heavy and unrelenting. Marcus had committed many sins, but now she was pointing him toward a path he had never considered. Not a path of easy forgiveness, but one of true atonement, of rebuilding what he had once destroyed. And so she gave him a task. She instructed Marcus to work alongside the villagers, to help rebuild what time and hardship had torn apart. It was no easy feat. He labored alongside the women, repairing old, crumbling houses, clearing the rubble left by the years, restoring long-abandoned fields. This was not just a test of his body, but of his spirit. Each time he lifted a stone, each time he swung a tool, he felt the weight of his past crushing down on him. Every bead of sweat that fell reminded him of the women he had betrayed, the children he had never known. Each morning, as the sun rose over the village, Marcus found himself working beside the very women he had once seen as fragile. Yet now he saw them for what they truly were, pillars of strength, unyielding warriors who had survived life's cruelties. No matter how harsh their reality, they endured, for their children, for the fragile hope that still flickered in their hearts. And each time Marcus met their gaze, he felt the undeniable truth. Change was necessary. The wise old woman watched him from afar, observing his every effort. She never spoke unless necessary. And then, one day, when his work was nearly done, she approached him. Placing a firm yet gentle hand on his shoulder, she said, "You must learn to let go of the past, just as you must learn to release all that has been. Only when you accept your mistakes, when you are truly ready to begin again, will you be able to forgive yourself." Her words illuminated the darkest corners of Marcus's soul. He understood then that redemption was not merely about repairing the past, it was about accepting it, about facing what he had done, about carrying responsibility instead of running from it. Redemption was not rewriting history, but transforming oneself from within. It was the courage to face one's own reflection, to learn how to forgive, and perhaps to love oneself once more. When his work in Ober's Hope was finally complete, when the home stood strong once more and the fields stretched open with new life, Marcus felt something shift deep within him. The shame, the unbearable guilt, though not gone, no longer crushed him. He knew the past could never be erased, but at last he understood that redemption was not about perfection. It was about choosing what was right, no matter how difficult. The lessons Marcus learned in Ober's Hope had reshaped him. He was no longer the man who thrived on fleeting conquests and hollow promises. He had learned to stand firm, to face his mistakes, and to seek true forgiveness. And above all, he had come to understand that redemption is only possible when one has the courage to face themselves, to acknowledge their flaws, and to change, not for others, but for their own soul. After months of traveling through villages, confronting his past mistakes and the ghosts that refused to fade, Marcus finally returned to the riverbank, the place where it all began. The waves gently lapped against the shore, carrying with them an eerie sense of familiarity, as if the soft breeze whispered reminders of his darkest days. The river remained vast and deep, unchanged in its endless expanse, yet this time it no longer offered peace. Instead, it had become a mirror, reflecting every pain, every sin he had committed. With each step closer, Marcus felt his heartbeat quicken. He had endured so much, pain, regret, and relentless trials that tested his soul, but nothing compared to the weight of returning here. Here, he had to face the truth. Here, he had to stand before the consequences of the choices that had defined his past. And then, as if summoned by fate, she appeared. Nia, the river goddess, materialized before him once more. Her piercing gaze was not only filled with wrath, but also with an ancient wisdom that saw through every shadow in his heart. "You have travelled a long road," Nia's voice echoed through the air, each word a challenge sharp as a blade. Her words swept through Marcus like an icy wind, sending a shiver down his spine. She paused, scrutinizing him with an unrelenting stare, as if searching the very depths of his soul. "But your final trial awaits you here. You must face those whom you have betrayed." The moment her words fell, the river erupted. The once calm surface roared to life, waves churning with a mysterious power. And then, one by one, faces emerged from the water. The faces of the women Marcus had deceived. Their eyes burned like fire, searing into his mind, their silent fury igniting every corner of his conscience. Each gaze carried the weight of pain, anger, and betrayal. No longer were they the dreamy, hopeful souls he had once enchanted and abandoned. They were scarred, their wounds deep and unhealed, their broken hearts beyond repair. Marcus stood frozen, trapped in what felt like a living nightmare. Every time he met their eyes, memories of his past sins crashed down upon him like waves against the rocks. And then there she was, Laia, the woman he had played with, deceived, discarded like a forgotten dream. She stepped forward, her eyes heavy with disappointment, a sorrow deeper than words could express. "The pain you left behind, we carried it," Laia whispered, her voice soft yet deafening in his mind. "You took our hearts, only to cast them away like they meant nothing." Her words struck like daggers, slicing deep into Marcus's soul. He felt his breath hitch, his chest tightening, as if an invisible force was crushing his heart. The voices of the women, their silent accusations, bound him in chains heavier than any punishment he could imagine. They were no longer weak, no longer helpless. They had endured, they had survived, and now they stood before him, not to beg for his remorse, but to force him to see. Marcus couldn't bear it any longer. His vision blurred as tears welled in his eyes, not just from guilt, not just from shame, but from the crushing realization that no matter what he did, no matter how much he repented, he could not undo what had been done. He had lost everything, not just their love, but himself. Finally, unable to hold himself upright, Marcus fell to his knees before the river, before the spectral figures of those he had wronged. His hands trembled as they touched the damp earth, his voice barely a whisper beneath the wind. "I'm sorry." His voice cracked, raw with anguish. "I'm sorry. For everything. I lied. I used you. I don't deserve forgiveness, but I will do anything, to atone for what I've done." The words left him feeling hollow, but even as they escaped his lips, he knew apologies were not enough. The women did not move. They did not speak. Their expressions did not soften. They had no use for words. They needed change. Nia, the river goddess, remained still, her gaze unyielding. She studied Marcus for a long moment, her silence heavier than the storm that had once consumed him. And then, finally, she spoke. "You have faced the truth of what you have done." Her voice carried no warmth, only judgment. But redemption is not found in mere words. Redemption is in action. You have learned that no one can change the past, but you can still change yourself. Marcus lifted his head, his tear-stained face still marked with sorrow. But now, beneath the grief, was determination. He could not erase his sins, but he could walk forward, I will change, he whispered, the words carrying the weight of his soul. I will do everything to make it right. I will start over. And for the first time in his life, he meant it. Just as Marcus prepared to rise, as the weight of his past mistakes seemed to settle and a sense of relief washed over him, a sudden shift in the air sent everything spiraling. Nia, the river goddess, let out a soft, knowing smile. Her gaze, once cold and unforgiving, now held something deeper, wisdom, an understanding that transcended time itself. You think your apologies are enough, she said, her voice echoing through the space around them like a divine decree. But your true battle is not with these women, it is with yourself. Marcus barely had time to grasp her words before a radiant light burst forth, engulfing him in an overwhelming force. His body crumpled, his knees giving way as if the very ground beneath him had been pulled away. A crushing weight bore down on him, rendering him powerless. And then a voice spoke, not from around him, but from within his very soul. The curse was never meant to punish you. It was meant to teach you. True transformation must come from within. Marcus's vision blurred. The world around him faded into a vast, endless void. And in that moment of stillness, realization struck him like thunder. Redemption was not found in words alone. It was not simply about seeking forgiveness from those he had harmed. It was about something far greater. It was about changing who he was at his very core. This journey, this painful, arduous path, was not about undoing the past. It was about becoming someone who would never repeat it. Nia said nothing more. She stood, watching in silence, her presence no longer imposing but illuminating. The light surrounding her softened, not as a force of judgment, but as a beacon of understanding. The curse had never been a sentence. It had always been an opportunity for Marcus to see himself for who he truly was, and for who he could become. Beside him, Amara stood still. She did not speak, nor did she need to. Her eyes, full of quiet empathy, held the truth he now understood. Marcus's greatest battle had never been with the world. It had always been with himself, and only he could choose whether to remain imprisoned by his past or to break free and change. As the divine glow of the river dimmed and the world returned to its quiet, undisturbed state, Marcus slowly rose to his feet. He felt lighter, not because the weight of his sins had vanished, but because for the first time, he was willing to carry them differently. Yes, he could not change what had been done, but he could choose how to live from this moment forward. He could choose to be better. For men like Marcus, this was the hardest lesson to learn. Lust and deception may bring fleeting satisfaction, but their consequences last a lifetime. The temporary pleasure of manipulation was never worth the enduring weight of regret. And if one never stopped to face their mistakes, they would forever remain a prisoner to them. Let this be a lesson. Redemption is only possible when change is real, when it comes from a place of true sincerity, when it is driven by love. Not for pleasure, not for validation, but for genuine transformation. Marcus has started that journey. And you, whoever you are, can too. Tell us your thoughts. Have you ever, like Marcus, had to face the ghosts of your past? Have you ever fought to change and truly atone for your mistakes? Subscribe to stay with us on this journey of storytelling. Like this video if this story resonated with you. And share it with someone. A friend, a family member, someone in the US or beyond, who might need to hear this lesson on forgiveness and change. Together, let's learn. Together, let's grow. And don't forget, there's more to this story. Stay tuned for part 2.
Thank you, everyone! Thank you, Elmar! Boom!